just when you thought it was going to be a normal Monday.
Baby math, 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 baby math.
All right, baby Nyson, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a math teacher with the world's best students.
Are you good at math?
Mm-hmm.
Well then, what is the quadratic formula?
X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
What is 99 squared?
9,801.
Can you recite pi?
Yes. 3.14, Does that make me a cutie pie?
Whoa, it's good to be back to one's own self. You know, when I was young, I wanted to grow up and be an astronaut. But my dad would always say, son, the sky's the limit. So I guess I couldn't be an astronaut. So I became a math teacher. No, really, I could never be an astronaut because I suffer from acrophobia. I'm acrophobic. Acrophobia is the fear of heights. Well, maybe I don't have a fear of heights. Maybe I just have a fear of falling. You know, many people have told me, Mr. Nyson, if you could overcome your fear of heights, you'd be very influential. And I agree with them. I would have a great impact. But make sure you pick the attendance. It is Monday, May 18th. Make sure you get that attendance taken today and every day. And so welcome back. This is your e-learning store for this week. This will be our last week of warm-ups. This will be the last week for Khan Academy. And so if you get these 3 done, you're done. And so get them all finished up, get all that done. And so that's going to be this week. Also, we have logic problems this week. Next week, we only have 2 days to school. And so we're wrapping things up. And so you want to also be wrapping things up and get this extra credit done. Also, I haven't really been, I'm going to try this week to make it to Mrs. Wagner's lunches. And so if you want to show up, I've never been there before. Maybe some of you haven't been there either. And so it'll be good to maybe see everybody. And then also next week, the school has certain days and your parents will get all that information about when to pick up stuff that was in your locker. But it's not just about pick up. It's also about drop off. And you have a textbook of mine and some of you have some other things. In geometry, you have mirrors and compasses and I want the stuff back. And I might have some things to give to you. And so we'll let you know about that more. But next week, we're going to plan on being at the school for those 3 days. And they have it all alphabetized and things. And so even if you don't have anything to pick up because your locker's all cleaned out, you do have textbooks, maybe library books, and things of mine that we need back. And so just listen. Whatever the school says takes priority. But you can email me. But we do want to get some of our things back. And that will be next week, and it'll be good to see some of you one last time before the summer, okay? And so, but this is the beginning of the week, and we want to do logic problems also. Some of you signed up for that math contest. You can still check the link I sent at the end of last week, but it costs $15. It's a math count style competition. It's Wednesday, I think 4 to 7. You have to be proctored. There's a lot of specific things, but also you need to make sure that you were supposed to sign up for that maybe by yesterday. And so you can double check to see if that window's still open in case you forgot. But he who hesitates is lost. So don't put things off, especially in this time of being home. It's easy to put things off. Okay. So for logic problems this week, we have some of you like these. Everybody got these right. And they were 3 darts last time. And so this time we got 5 darts. Just don't be throwing the darts at me. Okay. And so if you have this, you want to pick 5 numbers that add up to 111. It's a little tougher when there's more of them. But you could, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can either figure out which 5 add up, or you could add them all up and then subtract what you don't need, as opposed to keeping track of what you do need. And so that's another way of thinking about it. This second one could be kind of tough. It says determine the number of squares of any size that contain exactly one odd number. And it doesn't matter if there's an even or not in it. It just matters if there's an odd. And I got to shrink myself down so we can see more of this stuff. Okay? So if we look at this, determine the number of squares of any size that contain exactly one odd number. And so the first question is, and you got 3 of them to do. So like this one right here is in how many squares? Well, it's in this square. That counts as 1. It's in this square. That counts as 2. It's in this square. It counts as 3. It's in this square. It counts as 4. It's in this square. Now that has an even, but it only has one odd number. That counts as 5. But if I include this square, that would have 2 odd numbers, and I can't do that. Now what you have to do is you have to do that for all these odd numbers. Like here's 1. Here's 2. But I can't do 3 because I would have 2 odd numbers. And so I'm counting how many squares have only one odd number in it. They can have an even. Then the question says, how many squares have exactly one even number in it? And that means it can have an odd. And so this one's in 1. It's in 2. It's in 3. It's in 4. Do the 2 by 2s. Then do the 3 by 3s. Well, you can't do this one because that would have 2 evens. And then you'd have to have this one. And then you'd have this one. And so, and then the third question states, how many, whoa, I got shrunk. No, not back to the little kid, no. And so, get the sound off my face. It says, determine the number of squares any size in the diagram that contain exactly one even and one odd. So you only can have one of each. And so, like this would have one of each. But then, that's an even and an odd. This one would have one of each. This one would have one of each. Okay? This one would have one of each. This one would have one of each. This one would have one of each. I think you're getting the idea. And you want to get the maximum. And the counting problems, I know some of you is like, this is not my favorite. I need to grow up a little. And so here we're back. And then on the backside, some of you have emailed me and said, Mr. Nyson, with no tests and quizzes, I don't get say what you sees. And Preston, I don't like say what you sees. It's okay, Preston. You can still do them. And so I thought we'd give you some for one last time this year, since we don't have any on the tests and quizzes. But we'll shrink this down. Not me. Whoa, what's happening? And so this says there are a bunch of problems at the bottom, and you need to find, I don't know what's happening today. Shrinking down, getting bigger, kind of strange. I'll put myself right here. And so you have to write all the say what you sees down here at the bottom. So the letter tells you how many letters are in the word. If it says 4-4, that's 2 4-letter words. Okay? If it says 10, that's a 10-letter word. And if you think over, under, on, you're going to get most of them. And the reason there's a word search is because maybe you could find the word up here, like I see the word coupons. Well, that's a 7-letter word. And these down here are in alphabetical order. See, I'm making it nice on you. Oh, that'd be this one. And I'm going to write it here. C-O upon S. And so that would be coupons. If I write right here, ab on. Oh, ab and on. And so that would be abandon. Now, can I find the word abandon up here? I want you to find them both places. And so they could be backwards, they could be reversed, they could be wherever. I don't know where abandon is. Ab, oh, here it is. Ab and on, abandon. Okay, so the word search is supposed to, you just like look and go, wait, I found a word, cloverleaf. I wonder where that is. I found campground. I found belittled. I found a by a small y, and that would be abysmally. And so you know the next one's going to begin with A, these are going to begin with B, This one's going to be campground because camp G, round, campground. And so you look through those, and even if you maybe say, I don't like say what you see, I'm telling you how many letters, I'm telling you they're in alphabetical order, and I'm showing you all the answers up here that you can just find them. Okay, so I know some of you have been missing those. And so work on those, get both sides done. This week might be worth more than 10 points and make up for having maybe being the last logic problems of the year. And so we might have something for you next week, but it won't be logic problems. And so, but we'll be wrapping things up. So these will probably be worth more than 10. And so you want to get them done, and that's a way to raise your grade. Okay? So logic problems, warm-ups, and now let's get to the notes. Store for algebra today, we did completing the square. Some of those last problems were kind of hard. And so, whoops, I went past it. But all that, and especially problem 30, is going to lead into the quadratic formula that we have for today. And so this is notes 127. Tonight's homework is page 569, 1 to 27 odd. So you can check them in the back of the book. But remember, we want the imaginary answers. If it says no solution, you're still going to write the imaginary answers. Don't be just going, oh, I just wrote what was in the back of the book and I didn't show any work. Oh, I wonder if Mr. Nyson will realize what's going on with that one. And so make sure you actually do the problems and make an honest effort. Okay? And so on today's notes, we are going to, whoops, that's geometry. We are going to begin how the problem ended. And so on, the homework ended was with the quadratic formula. And so if we were in regular school, this would be a 20-point quiz, just you proving the quadratic formula. How do we complete the square? And then we're going to end up with the quadratic formula. And then you have to have that memorized. And so we're going to help you do that because this is something you need to know. If I knew it as a little boy, x equals, you need to know it now. Okay? And so first thing when we complete the square, Cole, what always has to be in front of the x squared? Yeah, a 1. So we're going to divide everything by a. So in that problem 30, hopefully you divided by a. Or that's what they did on the next page. So you divide everything by a. Now my steps might not match that next page exactly. So this is going to be x squared plus b over a x. And instead of writing the c over a, because I hate writing with this mouse, I'm going to move the c over a to the other side and make it the opposite of c over a. And then the question is, what do I do to complete the square? Well, that is what's on Khan Academy. One of the problems for this week is putting in what's completing the square. And so we put down here x plus something, quantity squared. Well, what goes in this spot right here, Jordan? Yeah, it's half of this. Well, don't do b over a divided by 2. Do half of b over a, which is b over 2a. And then we are going to square the b over 2a, so that's going to be b squared. And then we square the 2a, so that makes 4a squared. And then over here we have b squared over 4a squared. Well, on the right side, we need a common denominator. So this opposite of c over a, the common denominator is going to be 4a squared. And so I need to change colors here. We're going to multiply not by 4a, we're going to multiply by 1. We're going to multiply top and bottom by 4a. 4a over 4a is 1. And you're only allowed to multiply by 1 to not change it. And so my new numerator is going to be the opposite of 4ac all over 4a squared. And this is going to be plus b squared over 4a squared. Well, the thing is, it's all over 4a squared. So why write it twice? Just put the plus sign here and put it all over 4a squared. Then what are we going to do to both sides, Colin? Yeah, we're going to square root them. And there is something on Khan Academy about find the step or the error. What do we get on this side? We get plus or minus. Now I can't take the square root of the top because there's a plus sign there. but I can take the square root of the bottom. And the square root of the bottom, square root of 4a squared, is going to be 2a. The square root of this side is just going to be x plus b over 2a. And the inside, I'm going to switch it. Instead of writing negative 4ac plus b squared, I'm going to switch it around because that's what everybody does. They write b squared instead of plus negative. They just write minus 4ac. Now we almost have this solved for x. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move that plus b over 2a over. And so if they add b over 2a, we're going to subtract it. And so we're going to subtract this b over 2a, and it already has a common denominator. And so the final answer, and don't write this wrong, of our 20-point quiz that we should be taking, it's all over 2a, but instead of having b, we have negative b, but what if b is negative? So we say it's the opposite of b, plus or minus, now you got to write this carefully, the square root, and the square root symbol has to go over all of this. And what's under the square root symbol we call the discriminant. And I have something on Khan Academy. If we had more days of school, we would have homework just on the discriminant. And this part right here, without the square root sign, is called the discriminant. And see, if the discriminant is equal to 0, you won't have two answers. This is how you get one answer or two answers. Or none answers. No answers. Because what's under the square root sign, if that was negative, you wouldn't have any answers. But if it's equal to 0, you have one answer, because you don't have the plus or minus. And if it's equal to a positive, you have two answers. And the discriminant tells you how many x-intercepts. Because when you graph something, that tells you where it crosses the x-axis. And that will help you with the one Khan Academy thing without having you to watch other videos and things like that. And so you have to have this memorized. You have to be able to recite it. X equals opposite of b, plus or minus square root of b squared, minus 4ac over 2a. But we got this because you can sing it. And I know Joe's going to love this one because, you know, the Kaisers, they're big Notre Dame fans. Yeah, but we are. You know, you can sing this song to the Notre Dame fight song. X equals opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. X equals opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Yes! Now, you got that song stuck in your head all day. Make sure you do your math that you're learning first. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply that formula to these next problems. You know, the first thing we used to be able to do is factor them, and then we tried to get a perfect square and complete the square. You can always complete the square. On problem 1, we could say divide by 2, make that a 1, half, what's half of a half, a fourth, square that, add a 16th to both sides, and we could do that. It'd be like the hard ones from Friday. But here, we want to be able to just use the quadratic formula. Well, the quadratic formula, the number in front of the x squared is your a. The number in front of your x is your b. The number off by itself, the constant term that doesn't have any variables with it, is your c. And you should always have it set equal to 0. If you don't have it set equal to 0, you can't do this. So here's my a. A is 2. Here's my b. B is 1 because there's nothing there. Here's my c. C is negative 14. And so, what is it? And you better be singing it. Otherwise, we're going to make you do all the problems. X equals, and write it down. It helps you learn it. You start the homework. X equals opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Okay, so what's b? B's 1. So this is the opposite of 1, so it's negative 1. Plus or minus. Now be careful. B squared will always be a positive. If b's negative, a negative squared's a positive. A positive squared's a positive. So 1 squared's 1. You can make the minus a plus -4 if you want. Just remember that if A is positive and C is negative, that 4 is negative. So you're really going to be adding into this discriminant. And so this is going to be 2A. Well, A is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. So the hardest thing is figuring out the value of the discriminant. -1 plus or minus the square root of. And so 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 14 is 112. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. And that's all over 4. Now, this is called the discriminant. Since it's a positive number, we're going to have 2 answers. We're going to do -1 plus the square root of this, and we're going to do -1 minus the square root of this. And so that has 2 answers because b squared minus 4ac is positive. And when we graph it on, you don't have to graph them tonight. But this is what we're missing out on with only a few days of school left. If you would graph this parabola would be going upright, and it would cross the x-axis in 2 spots. Because if your discriminant is positive, that means there's 2 answers, and that's the number of x-intercepts you have. Okay? If your discriminant is negative, that means your parabola is not crossing the x-axis. Okay? And so the book might also ask for the decimals. You can type those in. Just remember, when you type them in, put parentheses around the top or hit the equal sign before you go dividing by 4. Otherwise, your calculator is only going to divide the square root of 112 by 4. Okay? Let's do the next one. 5x squared minus 6x plus 3 equals 0. What are the solutions to this? Oh, let me see if it'll factor. Oh, am I itching your nose? Ha! Now, and so we want to, it's not going to factor. Oh, let's complete the square and divide by 5 and do 6/5, and half of that's 3/5, and then square that's 9/25. Now, x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. This formula is a big deal, and you need to know it. And so I have x equals, what is the opposite of b? Well, b is -6, so the opposite of b is +6. Just remember, when you square b, it's always going to be a positive because a negative squared is a positive. So that's 36 minus 4 or plus -4. What's a, Annabelle? Yes, it's a 5. What's c? It's a 3. And then this is over 2a, so that's going to be over 10. And so then this is x equals, but we want to get, this is called the discriminant. -60 plus 36 is -24. And so I have 6 plus or minus the square root of -24 over 10. And if you look it up in the back of the book, they say no real solution. Well, we know that. But we can simplify the square root of -24. Ilya? Yeah, that'd be 4 times 6, so that'd be 2 square root 6. And the negative, Ilya, all those i's, yes, it'd be 2i square root 6. So this becomes 6 plus or minus 2i square root 6 over 10. Now this can be reduced. You reduce outside with outside, but notice how all the numbers have a 2. So if I switch this over, this, and this can all be reduced by 2. And so your simplified answer would be 3, get that off of yellow. That'd be 3 plus or minus I square root 6 all over 5. Now, if you graph this parabola would not cross the x-axis. It would be going uphill because that 5 is positive. And the parabola would be somewhere up here or somewhere over here. I don't know where it'd be. It could be right there. It could be wherever. But it's not going to cross the x-axis because the solutions are imaginary. So it doesn't cross. These solutions are the x-intercepts where it crosses the x-axis. And so it doesn't. So if your discriminant, if your b squared minus 4ac is negative, It's not going to cross the x-axis. I keep saying that because that's how you do your warm-ups on Khan Academy. Okay? Now what about this next one? We could plug into the quadratic formula, whoops, and say, well, this is my A, and this is my B, and this is my C. But who wants to plug in fractions to the quadratic formula? You have got to be kidding. We don't want to do that. And so we can outsmart these last few problems. I don't want to plug in fractions. So what can I multiply both sides by, Abby? Yeah, just multiply by 6. And if you multiply by 6, what's easier to plug in? You could plug in 3x squared plus 2x minus 18 equals 0. And there's like one on your homework that has decimals, and you can multiply by 10 or 100 to get rid of them. And you actually look up in the back of the book, and they didn't. And they have a decimal under the square root sign, which is a no-no because you're supposed to rationalize. But x equals, I won't write the formula this time. You write it maybe the first half of the time, and then you can maybe leave it off. Make sure I know that you know it. X equals the opposite of b, so that'd be negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 4, minus 4ac. But notice, the mistake that's going to occur, and when you make it, and then I can tell you didn't watch the videos, is this negative sign are going to make a, positive sign. So the value of the discriminant, even though this is all over 6, is x equals negative 2 plus or minus is going to be 4 plus 12 times 18. So 12 times 18 plus 4 is 220. And hopefully I don't mess this up. And it's all over 6. Well, what goes into 220? Well, 4 does. And so that's going to be 2 square root 55. So this is negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root 55 over 6. Well, this can be reduced, by 2. And so that'd be negative 1 plus or minus square root 55 over 3. And if you want the decimal, you take negative 1 plus square root 55, either put parentheses, round it, or hit equal sign before you divide by 6, and then do negative 1 minus square root 55, hit equals, and then divide by 6, or put parentheses around this top if you're using your calculator. Okay? And that's going to have 2 answers, and they're real numbers, so it's going to cross the x-axis in 2 spots. Okay? Because your discriminant is your b squared minus 4ac, just that portion of the quadratic formula. Okay? Now, let's look at these last couple. What's going to make the problems harder? Well, what makes the problems harder is it's not set equal to 0, and we have decimals. So I have negative 2x squared plus 0.7x plus 0.3 equals 0. So I set equals 0. Remember, the a is always in front of the x squared, b is in front of the x, but it has to be set equal to 0. And then how could I make these numbers nicer, Danielle? Yeah, I could multiply them by negative 10. That would make my a positive too, which I like. And then I would get 20 x squared. I don't know what's going on there. 20x squared plus negative 7x plus negative 3, and then of course 0 times anything 0. So we're going to go x equals the opposite of b. Well, the opposite of negative 7, 7. Plus or minus b squared. Well, b squared is always going to be a positive. So that's going to be 49. Minus 4a is 20, and c is negative. But notice you have a negative here and a negative here, so that's really going to make a positive. And it's all going to be over 2a, so 2 times 20 is 40. And x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 80 times 3 is 240 plus 49 is 289. Oh, wait, this would have factored. And then you feel like you're using overkill. And we're going to talk about that on Wednesday, trying to put all of our methods together. What is the square root of 289, Elizabeth? Yeah, it's 17. And so this would be 7 plus or minus 17 over 40. Well, you don't leave the answer like this. Your answer is 7 plus 17 over 40, which is 24 40ths. And then your answer is 7 minus 17 over 40, which is negative 10 40ths. And you don't leave those either. You reduce. Divide this by 8. Your answer is 3/5. Divide this by 10. Your answer is negative 1/4. It would have meant that all along this whole thing would have factored. This 3/5 and negative 1/4 means that 20x squared minus 7x minus 3 would have factored into 5x minus 3 times the quantity 4x plus 1. So doing the quadratic formula was a little overkill. But we're going to talk about that on Wednesday when we analyze the different methods. Now we have one more example right here for the notes where just your A's and B's are harder numbers to plug in. And so if I plug into the quadratic formula, here's my A, here's my B, and here's my C. Now I could multiply everything by square root. Opposite of B, well, if B is negative 2, the opposite of it's positive 2. Plus or minus the square root of B squared, negative squared, and a positive squared is a positive. So that'd be 4 minus 4. A is square root 3, and C is 2 square root 3. Well, the part underneath the square root sign is called the discriminant, the B squared minus 4AC. All divided by 2a. X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. In this case, it's 2 square root 3. So underneath the radical sign, the discriminant, 2 square root 3 times square root of 3 is 2 square root 9, which is 2 times 3, which is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. 4 minus 24 is negative 20. So it's 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 20. And it's all over 2 square root 3. Well, Rosie, what's the square root of negative 20? Yeah, it'd be 2i square root 5. So this is going to become 2 plus or minus 2i square root 5 all over 2 square root 3. Well, then, yes, the 2's would cancel. But if you cancel the 2's, you're left with a 1 there. And this is 1 plus or minus I square root 5 over the square root of 3. And Ryan, can we leave square roots in the bottom? No, we have to rationalize. So we're going to multiply top and bottom, and on top we're going to distribute. We're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3, because square root of 3 over the square root of 3 is really 1. And so then this is going to be square root 3 plus or minus I square root 15 all over square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, which is 3. And so since it's imaginary answers, that means there are no x-intercepts. So if you're going to graph it, it wouldn't cross the x-axis. Here's the x-axis. It won't cross it. And so that's because the discriminant was 0. So on your homework tonight, the first ones, whoa, we got to get all this out of here. On your homework, you write it down and you just go, what's A, what's B, what's C? Well, we're doing the odds, so you can check them in the back of the book, but don't just write the answer. I want to see how you're plugging in. A is 1, B is negative 3, C is negative 10. X equals opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2A. A is 5, B is negative 11, C is 2. A is 1, B is negative 5, C is negative 6. And you just go through, and these are all nice. Now when you get to 15, it's not set equal to 0. So you got to add 7 to both sides to make this equal to 0. That's going to change it. You got to make sure this 17 is equal to 0. And then what do they do on problem 19? Well, these numbers are not nice. So like multiplying by 10, and you get 10a squared plus 7a minus 1. And then on these next ones, they're just not in the nice form. They're gradually just putting them in other forms. And so for 21, you want this equal to 0. And so move this over, make it negative 0.6r, move this over, make it negative, and multiply by 10. And that make this a 40. And so set equals 0, multiply by 10. This one, multiply everything by 6. This one, multiply everything by 6. Don't be plugging fractions in. Ah! And then 27, watch the end of the videos, because it's like they don't see the hint. Watch to the end of the video. 3x over x plus 2 equals, move the other fraction over, x plus 1 over x minus 1. And what did we just create, Jack? Yeah, a proportion. And a x plus 1 times x plus 2, I'm going to FOIL, and I get x squared plus 3x plus 2. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to set it equal to 0. And then I'm going to plug it into the quadratic formula. X equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So, get all that done. Send me your homework. It's a rainy day. Get the warm-ups done. Get old stuff done. Get caught up. It's almost the end, and we miss all of you. Email me your questions. And if you're emailing me your homework right now from last week, obviously I'm not getting to it right now, but I will. So send me all your stuff, okay? And maybe we'll see you. Hopefully we'll see you at lunch this week at Mrs. Wagner's lunch. And haven't seen all you guys, okay? Hopefully join us. Bye-bye.